Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and this week we are doing a little Halloween kind of special here. You see, I've kind of got the Halloween theme going for the holiday, of course, because here we are at September 1st, so we're getting closer and closer to fall and to the Halloween season. Which is like my favorite time of year. I get so excited, and especially excited this Halloween because, of course, we have the new Halloween film coming out, Halloween 2018, showing the return of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. We've got Nick Castle coming back as Michael Myers, even though at this point I believe it's just a cameo. Because James Jude Courtney is actually playing Michael for most of the film. But still, it's even the fact that he has a cameo is really cool. So this episode, I want to show a few of my Halloween theme items that I have that I haven't really showed before on the show. And I thought it might be fun to show off some of my little memorabilia and also to talk about the upcoming Halloween film. So here we have my Michael Myers candle. Check that out. I actually purchased this in Salem, believe it or not. I love it. I think it's so cool. Whenever I watch my Halloween movies, I want to light my Halloween candle. I also got a few really cool Halloween comic books. Look at that. Halloween Night Dance. A really cool comic if you guys ever get a chance to check it out. Hope you can see that alright. Got this one here, the Halloween, the First Death of Laurie Strode. Cool, huh? Really enjoy these series. Here's another one, Halloween, the Death of Laurie Strode, and there you got Laurie Strode right on the cover. It looks just like Jamie Lee, doesn't it? Cool, huh? And, the main star attraction of this episode is my Michael Myers action figure from movie Maniacs, McFarlane Toys, and it's signed by Tony Moran, who played Michael Myers in Halloween from 1978, mainly in that scene where he gets his mask taken off by Laurie. The one time you get a good look at Michael's face the whole franchise, pretty much. And this is one of my prized possessions. I really love it. Just so awesome that I was able to have him sign my Michael Myers figure, and I absolutely love the figure itself. It's awesome. I was so happy that they came out with this figure, because this, I think, was the first, real action figure for Michael Myers. That's awesome. Look at the detail on that. I love it. So, guys, let's talk about the new film coming out. How excited are you guys, I am really, really excited. It's hard to put into words how exciting it is to get. It's been since 2009 since we had the last Halloween film, and that was one which I did not care for, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So it's been a long, bumpy road to returning to the Halloween franchise. There were a couple false starts, originally we were going to do a Halloween 3, which was to follow Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and that was called Halloween 3D. That never got off the ground, and then they started again with Halloween Returns, which was supposed to be a continuation of Halloween 2, the original from 1981. And I was really intrigued by that, and from what I read of the script that they eventually came out with that leaked online, it sounded really interesting to me, but unfortunately that never got made. It got scrapped, put in the scrap heap. I guess the rights to the Halloween franchise went to a different company, so that had a lot to do with it as well. But eventually, Blumhouse acquired the rights to Halloween, and now we're getting the Halloween from Blumhouse Films. And you got John Carpenter as executive producer, returning to the franchise. He hasn't been part of the franchise since Halloween 3, way back in, what was it, 1982? Oh man, it's a long time ago. And so yeah, right after Halloween 3, he just divorced himself from the franchise completely. He actually never even wanted to do part 2. He kind of got forced into doing that by contract, because he never really wanted a sequel to Halloween. But as we all know, I absolutely love Halloween 2, so... However, whatever negativity went into the making of Halloween 2, this bad boy right here, I don't care, because it's freaking awesome. I actually just watched it today, as a matter of fact, right after Halloween, the original. I had a little double feature. I still love the film and think it's amazing. I don't care what anybody says. Halloween 2 is freaking amazing. It's my favorite horror sequel ever. Which brings me to the fact that it always kind of bothers me when they ignore several entries in a franchise and they created a whole new timeline, which we first saw after 4, 5, and 6 when they made Halloween H2O. That completely ignored 4, 5, and 6, and that always bothered me, because you really got to know some of those characters, like Jamie Lloyd, played by Danielle Harris, and they had established a storyline with that, the Cult of Thorn, which I felt was interesting. It wasn't executed that well in Halloween 6, but I felt it was intriguing. I felt like they could have kept that going, and maybe if they got a different director and somebody else to handle it, it would have went over better. But I always thought it was an interesting concept. And of course they had kept the Laurie is Michael's sister aspect to the franchise throughout, continuing from Halloween 2. So Halloween 4 continued from part 2, where you saw Michael was in a coma after he had burned in the fire in the hospital at the end of Halloween 2. And that always worked for me. I always really enjoyed it. And it was explained that Laurie had died in a car crash. And that Jamie Lloyd was adopted. But she was the real daughter of Laurie Strode. And so I connected with the Jamie Lee character because she was portrayed so well by Danielle Harris. And same thing in Halloween 5. I really enjoy Halloween 5. I know a lot of people don't, but I think there's a lot of good stuff in Halloween 5. I think it's scary. I think the mood and the atmosphere is really good. I think Don Shanks was a solid shape. Yeah, it's got Tina. She's not the greatest final girl in the world, and she couldn't quite live up to Rachel's expectations. So Rachel Carruthers was another great character that was introduced in Halloween 4 that so many of the fans love, you know. And she did get to return in part 5 for the first, 30 minutes or so. And it was a nice turn, I felt, but once Tina took over, and she's kind of an annoying character, that kind of hurt the film. Several things hurt the film, but I just think there's a lot of good stuff in 5. Same thing with 6. There's a lot of good stuff in 6. You had a real brutal Michael Myers, real vicious, and it did have a great mood and atmosphere. However, certain things I didn't like the acting was very wooden and very stale, and you can tell these people were not very good actors. They were not very professional. So yeah, the acting was very campy at times, even including Paul Rudd. You know, I didn't care much for his character either. I like the fact that Tommy was returning from the original film, but I didn't think he did a very good job. I think they should have just got the guy who played Tommy in the original film. That would have been more legit, you know. Why couldn't he do it? And I did enjoy the cult storyline. I thought it was a cool concept. It just wasn't executed that well. Plus the difference between the theatrical cut and the producer's cut. There was so many issues with that. And I actually enjoy the producer's cut. I think it's a much better film. It's more cohesive. It makes a lot more sense than the theatrical cut. Because when I saw the theatrical version in theaters, I almost walked out because I thought it was just a terrible mess of a film, and I just didn't know what the hell he was trying to do with it, you know? It seemed like a convoluted mess. But I think they fixed a lot of those problems when you watched the producer's cut. Of course, they had to change that because Donald Pleasance died, you know, and the way the film ends in the producer's cut, it heavily involves Dr. Loomis. You know, I don't want to give any spoilers out, but he is a major factor in the ending of the film on the producer's cut version. At any rate, I'm kind of waffling on, but it always bothered me that the alternate timelines, how they keep screwing up the timeline in the Halloween franchise. That's one of the biggest problems in the Halloween franchise. And now here we go again. Now we're ignoring every sequel in the franchise with this new Halloween film coming out in October. And that does bother me, you know. But I am glad to know that they are paying homage to a lot of the sequels. As we saw in the trailer, there were several little nuggets and little nods, tips of the hat to the original franchise and its sequels. At any rate, it is kind of intriguing that they're only following the original 1978 film, because now Michael has no direct ties to Laurie other than the fact that she's the girl that got away, you know. And the fact that Michael fixated on her so much in the original film, that he chose her to stalk, you know. She was his main prey in that original film. He definitely fixated on her. But it makes you think more like real life, how men stalk women in real life, you know. These things do happen in real life. Psychos just stalk and fixate on certain women sometimes, you know. So it kind of brings that realistic sense into it, which is intriguing. So I think could be interesting if it's done right, you know. And that's the biggest thing. We need a good Halloween movie, you know, because we haven't had one in a long time. The last decent one was the remake by Rob Zombie, and I say decent. I don't say good even. I say decent. But it was decent. So that's the last decent film we got. Of course, before that, you had the train wreck that is Halloween Resurrection. Which is completely undid everything they did in Halloween H2O, which I felt was a pretty solid return for the franchise, because you had Laurie Strode returning. Again, they were ignoring part 4, 5, and 6, but at the same time you had Jamie Lee Curtis coming back into the fold, and that was exciting. Unfortunately, Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance, had passed on, so you didn't have him in the film, and that was sorely missing in H2O. But the fact that Michael and Laurie were brother and sister definitely adds to H2O a lot to me, I think, you know. That connection really works in Halloween 2 and Halloween H2O. So if you follow the timeline of 1, 2, and H2O, I think that's a pretty solid trilogy, you know. So it's weird, you got 1, 2, and 3 go together, then you have 4, 5, and 6 go together. And then you have, of course, H2O and Resurrection go together, but we don't like to count that one. I don't think that ever happened. It never happened. Oh, Busta Rhymes, you kill me. Why? the fact that Resurrection happened is just a travesty. I mean, at least if it was done right, it could have been different, but the fact that it's such a piece of junk, you know, the fact that they would just, it's so obvious that they were just trying to make money off the name of the Halloween franchise when they made Resurrection, because it's just product. It's so much of a Hollywood product, you know, just knocking it out quick, trying to make a quick buck. They just didn't think anything about it. They didn't put any real thought into it. They just threw some hip young actors from like American Pie and whatever movies were going on at that time. And the film is so dated, it's unbelievable, with that Blair Witch Project style, with the camera work, you know. Ugh. The whole webcam thing. Oh, it's brutal. It's so dated now, even though the film isn't that old, it just seems so dated because of the idea of it. It's just that found footage, late 90s thing going on with Blair Witch Project and movies of that ilk. Unfortunately, so I blame the fall of the Halloween Resurrection on Halloween Resurrection, you know? It just ruined the entire franchise. That's why they had to reboot it with Rob Zombie's Halloween. If they had just ended it at H2O, that would have been perfect. I would have been happy, and I think a lot of the fans would be fine with it. But at any rate, they got this new film coming out, and it's very exciting, actually, because after seeing the trailer, that really made me buy into it, you know, that this is going to be a scary Halloween, that we're going back to the basics of Halloween from the original film, and we're keeping that dark tone of the original, and we're keeping the original essence, the original concept of the shape that is Michael Myers, and that's very interesting. And the fact that Laurie's battle-hardened, you know, and that she's been preparing for Michael's return for 40 years. She's been preparing for him. She knows that he's going to escape at some point because of who he is and the way he responded in battle against Michael Myers, the way he kept coming back and kept coming back no matter what she did to him. So that fact leads her to believe that somehow, some way, he's going to escape eventually. And she's going to have to deal with it. So that's what she's doing. She's trying to protect her family. She's built this underground bunker thing. She's got all kinds of guns and shotguns. And she's been practicing at target practice. And she's ready for him. She's ready for battle. And that's exactly what happens. Everyone in town thinks she's crazy, thinks she's a Looney Tune. You're crazy, dude. He's in jail. There's no way he's ever going to escape. He's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. That's what everyone else thinks, but she knows better. But everyone in town just thinks she's nuts. So I like that idea, and I think it's going to really work well, and it's going to be really exciting to see. I am disappointed that it's going to ignore Halloween 2, which is my absolute favorite sequel in the franchise. It's my favorite horror sequel, period. And that is kind of depressing for me, but I am kind of over it. I'm not truly over it. I'll probably never be over it, but at the end of the day, I just want to see a great Halloween film. So that's it for our discussion for the upcoming Halloween film. I know I hadn't done one on the Halloween film in a while, so I figured it was time. And I'm sure we'll probably do another one before the film comes out, and eventually a review of that film. But at any rate, I'm still excited no matter what. I am very excited to be in that theater on October 19th. And thank you folks for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.